My name is John Ficara. I'm the marketing director here at Canepa. Canepa is an automotive facility in Scotts Valley, California. And what we do here is sell collectible cars. We restore collectible cars and race cars. Pretty much do everything in-house that has anything to do with collectible vehicles. You know, Bruce's policy is that every one of these cars up here could start and run in 2 days. So, and some of them do. There's 4 cars here in the museum that race quite frequently. You know, there's one reason that for example, none of the cars here have stanchions around them, or you can go right up to the car. Bruce believes the cars should run, that they should race, and they should be accessible to people, not only in a museum, but at a racetrack, that their true nature as a race car is on the track running. And you can appreciate them for the artistry of the design to a point, but you really want to hear the engine run. Like everybody's like, they're like, oh, there's the Ferrari 250 LM, but you really want to hear the V12 fire up. Or they see a 935, you want to hear the twin turbo spool up. So this is not a static museum. Everything here can go. And I think he's driven pretty much every single one of these cars at some point. So this is our shop where we have about 75 employees that work on all kinds of different vehicles. The 427 Cobra over here is Bruce's personal car. This is not only an original 427, it's the last Shelby Cobra ever built. It was found with 6,000 miles on it. So we restored it a few years ago. And how we did it, which is how we do a lot of our restorations, we take them completely apart and we label and catalog everything. Every single nut and bolt on this car, every screw is off the original car. We replated them and we tried to put them back on where they came from. We took about 6,000 photographs of it when we disassembled it. So the interior, the leather in there, that's the original leather interior. It's the only things we really changed are the rubber and the rivets. You know, everything else has been completely hand restored. It's about 4,500 hours worth of work. These are 2 Ferraris. This is a 212 and this is a 275 alloy body with a competition engine in it. It's a 2-cam, but it's a competition motor. If you look at a Ferrari stripped down without its body and you look at the welding on them, you know, 50s and 60s Ferraris, it wouldn't pass shop class in high school now. It's not great. But the masters weren't working on the street cars. They were working on the race cars. The street cars were just built to finance the race cars. And it's kind of true because Ferrari said he didn't sell cars, he sold engines. And we try not to, we don't go in, a lot of people used to back in the 90s when they were restoring them, they would grind down the bad welds and put new welds over top of them to make them look nice. We don't do any of that. We don't try to erase the story of the car. So we have to try to put it back to as nice as possible. 964 convertible. This car has been sitting, it's got how many miles on it?
1,900 miles.
1,900 miles. So this woman and her husband bought this car, this is the story that I've heard, bought this car and basically put it away and never drove it. He passed away, so this is the one car they have to remember him by. So she takes it out of storage. It came in here last week, I mean, one of those barn find kind of things, covered in dust, hadn't driven in 20-something years. It's got its original tires on it. So she's asked us, in honor of her late husband, to bring it back to life. So we're going through from front to back.
I had to laugh because we just pulled 3 freaking mice out of the damn thing. 3 of them. One jumped on my neck, and then the other one jumped on my arm, and then the other one jumped down, went that way. Well, it was actually 4. The other one went that way.
We've got a couple of the Porsche legends here because we're getting ready for the historics this year, and they're featuring Can-Am cars. So this is a Porsche 91710. So this was a Can-Am car, or in Europe, Inner Series, back in the 70s. So this 91710, we've just rebuilt the engine on. These motors put out about 1,100, 1,150 horsepower, 5-liter twin turbos. But here's a 91730 motor. So when this is hooked up to its turbos and it's back in the car, historically they've been known to put out about over 1,500 horsepower. And the chassis for that car is right over there. 91730 chassis 3. And what makes chassis 3 famous is chassis 3 was the chassis that won the Can-Am championship in 1973. So this is actual car that Mark Donohue drove. This is the actual car that put out the 1,500 horsepower. And in 1975, they pulled it out of mothballs and they set the closed course speed record in it at Talladega at 221 miles an hour. And they think they were putting about 1,580 horsepower at that point. So we're doing a full restoration of this car. This is a Shadow, the Can-Am car from the same era, 1972. Shadow was an American company. They eventually won the Can-Am championship in 1974, but this is before then. And in 72, 73, when Porsche showed up with the turbo, everybody got really nervous. So they decided to twin turbocharge a Chevrolet big block. Now, they didn't quite have the experience or the technology that the Germans had access to, because Bosch was working with Porsche to help develop that motor and the injection and everything in it. And this was just American good old boys sticking on a couple of turbos on a big block and seeing what would happen. So it didn't, let's not say it wasn't terribly reliable. So it didn't really finish any of the races it started, but it did put out amazing power. So what we're doing is we're restoring it for its owner, and he wants to drive it in historic races. And what we're doing is we're making sure that it'll be reliable. So we're keeping it historically correct as possible, but we're gonna build in some modern reliability into it so you can safely and reliably drive it at racing. Now, we tested it on the dyno with the twin turbos, 1,477 horsepower. You're talking about an insane amount of power. Like I think he's gonna drive it once, he's gonna hit the gas once and go, okay, I'm done. Like, that'd be like, just scare the hell out of him. You know, collectible cars are about emotion, right? So all these cars are worth the same if you crunch them up in a ball and you sell off the scrap metal. So sometimes we get emotional cars in here. This gentleman, he wanted his dad's car. So he's gonna drop 6 figures on a restoration to make a perfect version of a 4.5 just like his dad had. Now, does it make financial sense? No. But it makes emotional sense to this particular customer. And that's fine, you know, because that's what it is emotion. So if he's got the disposable income to create that, great. And even more fortunate, to whoever buys it off of him is gonna have the most perfect 4.5, you know, if that ever happens in years to come. So at least we're saving one 4.5 perfectly. So that's gonna be a, you know, full paint and restoration on that car. Bruce believes that all these things should be shared, that they're not part of his private hidden collection, that we are just caretakers of these vehicles. So there's no right we have over them to keep them away from other people. So they should be shared. We're open to the public 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. The museum, the showroom, and the shop walk are all open free to the public. It'd be great as a marketing person if there was one type of person that came here, because I could just look right at them, but really we have all types and from all nations. It's a huge range of folks that walk through that door. And, you know, we're open to any of them. Excuse me, I gotta go and get cars ready for Monterey, so bye.